The pattern that sees itself, the eye blinks, believing it saw the truth, but the truth had already bent before the looking began. Every culture carries a lens ground from the sediment of its fears, and through that lens, the world appears exactly as expected. We call this clarity. History calls it repetition. Like a mirror angled toward itself, cultures reflect what they already believe and mistake the echo for discovery. The prediction becomes the proof. The bias becomes the map. And the map, we're told, is the territory. But what if the territory was never there at all? Somewhere in the architecture of collective thought, a pattern emerges not from wisdom, but from recursion. A society predicts danger, and in preparing for that danger, creates it. The prophecy doesn't fail. It fulfills itself with mathematical precision. The ancient Romans feared barbarian invasion, so they militarized their borders, drained their economy, and collapsed under the weight of the very defenses meant to save them. The pattern whispered, "Protect yourself into oblivion." Was it strategy or a script, written long before the actors arrived? Medieval Europe saw plague as divine punishment, which led to the persecution of healers, the destruction of medical knowledge, and conditions that spread disease faster than prayer could contain it. The prediction loop tightened. The meaning they assigned created the outcome they feared. The bias didn't just distort reality, it authored it. Take a breath. Imagine for a moment that every headline you've ever read, every crisis you've witnessed, every collapse you've studied, imagine they all began, not with events, but with expectations, with collective agreements about what must be true. The Cold War wasn't just about missiles. It was about two civilizations staring at each other through lenses ground from opposite fears and each seeing exactly what their lens was designed to reveal. The Soviet Union predicted capitalist aggression and built a fortress state. The West predicted totalitarian expansion and armed itself into permanent anxiety. Both were right. Both were wrong. Both were trapped inside a prediction that fed itself until the pattern collapsed under its own weight. But here's the unsettling part. Neither side ever questioned the lens. Cognitive scientists have a term for this confirmation bias, but that clinical phrase doesn't capture the full horror of it. It's not just that we notice evidence that confirms our beliefs, it's that we create the evidence. We shape reality to match the prediction, then point to reality as proof the prediction was true. Cultures do this at scale. In the 1980s, American schools predicted that Japanese economic dominance would reshape the global order. Entire policy frameworks were built around this certainty. Billions were invested. Careers were staked. Then Japan's economy stagnated for 3 decades not because the prediction was tested and failed, but because the prediction was never truly examined at all. The bias loop had already closed before the first analysis was written. What if progress isn't a march forward, but a repetition with better special effects? Nations cling to self-defeating patterns not because they lack intelligence, but because intelligence itself operates within inherited frameworks. The framework determines what counts as evidence, what counts as threat, what counts as victory. France after World War I built the Maginot Line, an impenetrable fortress designed to prevent another German invasion through the same routes. The prediction was clear. History repeats. The bias was embedded in concrete and steel. When Germany invaded through Belgium instead, the line became a monument to the dangers of fighting the last war. The pattern didn't fail because it was illogical. It failed because it mistook logic for wisdom. And wisdom would have asked, what if the enemy learned to let's shift the lens, just slightly, and examine not what cultures believe, but why they need to believe it? Why do prediction bias loops persist even when evidence accumulates against them? Carl Jung observed that the psyche protects itself through projection. The traits we cannot accept in ourselves, we see magnified in others. Nations, he noted, have shadows too, collective shadows. And those shadows contain all the qualities a culture has exiled from its self-image. America projects its anxiety about freedom by seeing tyranny everywhere. Russia projects its fear of encirclement by seeing enemies at every border. China projects its historical humiliation by seeing disrespect in every diplomatic exchange. None of these projections are entirely false, but none are entirely true either. They are interpretations, meaning signals filtered through trauma, amplified by repetition, and mistaken for objective reality. The bias loop isn't a bug in human cognition, it's a feature of collective survival. Except when survival itself becomes the threat. Think of it this way. Every culture is answering a question it inherited from the past. But the question may no longer fit the world. And yet the answer keeps coming. Century after century, war after war, crisis after crisis. The British Empire asked, how do we maintain order? And the answer: colonization, control, civilizing missions created the exact chaos it sought to prevent. Independence movements, guerrilla wars, post-colonial fractures, the empire dissolved, but the question remained embedded in policy, in language, in the structure of international institutions. The Soviet Union asked, how do we protect the revolution? And the answer: centralization, surveillance, ideological purity killed the revolution from within. The state became the very oppressor it had overthrown. Was it betrayal or inevitability built into the question itself? Maybe the most dangerous thing a civilization can do is answer the wrong question correctly. Pause again. Notice the feeling this creates. A kind of vertigo, perhaps. The sense that the ground beneath collective understanding is less solid than we believed. This isn't nihilism, this is precision. Anthropologist Gregory Bateson described what he called double bind. Situations, contexts where every choice reinforces the problem. Cultures create these binds constantly. The more they try to fix the pattern, the deeper the pattern embeds. The prediction loop becomes a trap that tightens with effort. The war on drugs predicted that criminalization would reduce addiction. Decades later, addiction rates climbed, prisons overflowed, and cartels became more powerful than governments. The policy created exactly what it claimed to prevent. But the prediction loop was so strong, so embedded in political identity and moral narrative, that reversing course felt like surrender rather than adaptation. The signal rising addiction and violence was drowned out by the meaning already assigned to it. We're not doing enough. So the loop intensified. More enforcement, more incarceration, more proof that the prediction was correct. What if safety was never the goal, only the appearance of trying? Now extend this. Apply it not to policy, but to perception. How many wars were fought not over land or resources, but over interpretations? How many collapses occurred not because solutions didn't exist, but because the culture couldn't see solutions that contradicted its predictions? The Aztec Empire predicted that cosmic balance required human sacrifice. When Spanish conquistadors arrived, the Aztecs interpreted every defeat through this lens. The gods are displeased, which led to more sacrifices, more internal division, and faster collapse. The biased loop prevented adaptation. The meaning signal was clear change to strategy, but the prediction framework couldn't process it. History is filled with civilizations that possessed the knowledge to survive, but lacked the cognitive flexibility to use it. The Vikings had detailed climate records, yet persisted in Greenland using farming methods that couldn't sustain them. Easter Islanders knew their forests were vanishing, yet continued harvesting trees for religious monuments. The prediction our way will prevail overrode the signal. And when the collapse came, each culture blamed external forces, droughts, enemies, gods, anything, but the lens through which they'd been interpreting reality. So here's the uncomfortable question. What prediction loops are we inside right now? What patterns are we defending because questioning them feels like losing our identity? What signals are we drowning out because they contradict meanings we've already assigned? The content you're engaging with right now is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not constitute medical, financial, or professional advice and should not be used as a substitute for guidance from qualified professionals. All decisions made based on this content are the sole responsibility of the individual. But consider, every political ideology is a prediction loop. Every economic model, every cultural narrative about progress, decline, threat, or salvation. Each one filters reality through inherited assumptions, notices confirming evidence, and dismisses contradiction as noise. This isn't a call to abandon belief. It's an invitation to examine the machinery of belief itself. What surprised me most wasn't what I learned about prediction bias loops, but how a simple analog journal helped me observe patterns more clearly. I wasn't expecting such clarity, and it reminded me that seeing the world differently always starts with seeing ourselves differently. This isn't a recommendation, just something that changed how I process information. I'll leave the link below if you want to explore what I mean, because breaking a prediction loop requires one radical act, noticing that you're inside one, and noticing changes everything. The eye blinks again, but this time, it wonders, what if the truth isn't what I'm seeing, but what I'm bringing to the looking? That question, uncomfortable, destabilizing, is the first crack in the lens, and through that crack, something new might enter. Not certainty, not another prediction to replace the old one, just openness to signals we've been trained not to hear. Cultures that survive aren't the ones with the best predictions. They're the ones that learn to question their own patterns before the patterns consumed them. The flags still wave symbols of identity, meaning, belonging. But now, perhaps, we see them differently. They were never about nations or truth. They were about the mind's hunger for coherence, even when coherence becomes a cage. And the cage, we realize, was always unlocked. We just kept interpreting the door as a wall. What part of this made you question a pattern you hadn't noticed before in the world, or in yourself? If this made you think differently, you've already joined the shadow. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.